My name is Salipa Tupuola, over the Teaching Family Model at the Children's Bureau. My wife and I, we used to run a group home with Utah Youth Village. We had a youth come through our home. He struggled with accepting consequences. We noticed that every little small consequence or whatever it was, he threw a fit. This young man, or he was 11 years old, but what he would display when he accepted a or didn't accept the consequence, he was rolling around on the floor, he was screaming, he was threatening. He'd get mad, he'd say, "You guys are not gonna like me because I'm gonna turn into the Hulk." Eventually, after using some teaching interactions and being patient with him and obviously some clear expectations that what you are doing is very inappropriate, every time after that, probably a few days later, it went from rolling around on the ground for 4 hours, slowly fade out, probably like 2 hours, 1 hour. Eventually one day, probably like 2 weeks later, we noticed that we're starting to understand the importance of accepting a consequence, and it changed from rolling around to screaming to just clenching fists, and obviously start expressing his feelings, really saying, "Hey, can I talk to you guys about why I'm mad right now and what I need to do better?" This youth eventually graduated our program really quick, eventually transitioned back to his family. When he did go back home, some structure wasn't the same. It was very different. So unfortunately, he ended up back into the system. At that point, my wife and I, we had found out that this child was back into the system. And at that point, we were no longer in the group homes. So we went looking for him. We found him in a institution-like setting. It was locked facility, and we brought him back into our home. We found that we still needed to work on, especially accepting consequences. See some success from that. It did take a lot of time, but patience was one of the skills that we as parents had to work on. We approached this youth and asked him if he wanted to be a part of our family. From that experience and working with him and just being a part of his life, he is now my son. Working with different skills and understanding the Teaching Family Model and how it's not only affected us as parents in teaching him, but it took that relationship to a whole different level. He's learned is to be able to express how he's feeling. He can actually talk through his frustrations.